look at this freaking exhaust collector. Holy moly. Oh! Is that seawater? Look at this, dude. This is the most disgusting car I've ever touched. What up, everybody? This week's episode gonna be a little bit different because you guys have kind of caught up with where I'm at with the car. And to be honest, we're getting ready for Irwindale, which is this weekend, and I haven't had time to work on the C8. That thing's been a handful. I mean, I crashed into Chelsea at the last round, so that required a lot of work. And don't get me wrong, Alec did most of the work, but I just haven't had time to put a bunch of hours into the C8. So it's pretty much exactly where it is. One big thing that I did do this week, I spent a lot of time on the phone FaceTiming with the CAD Chris guys because that is very, very close. It is pretty much designed and gonna be hopefully in line for cutting this week, I hope. So we'll have a cage in the next 2 weeks, which is awesome, right? But what that means is that there's just not a whole lot of things that I have things to do, but no cool, exciting things. So instead of showing you guys a bunch of work that I'm gonna be doing, I'm gonna show you guys the behind the scenes stuff that me and Chris from Part Shop Max, CAD Chris on social media, have been working on. The fuel cell, the radiator, the engine modeling, the engine mount, all these things that he's been spending time modeling that I have been a part of, you know, from afar and just giving my input, and he's just been doing it. It still has required so much time and effort and thought from me too. So huge thank you to Chris. Like, I can't even compare to what the hours that you put into it, but I want to show you guys these things that we've been talking about. So I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to show you guys here on the screen, and I'm going to do a voiceover and talk you guys through it. And kind of the other thing that's cool is that this car is going to be in the Heatwave booth at Irwindale this weekend. Like, Heatwave hit me up and was like, could we put the C8 in our booth? And I thought they were joking, but they're not. But they know it's a project, right? They know exactly where it's at. You guys have all, everyone knows where it's at. Everyone knows that it's a freaking project basket case right here, but it's gonna be cool. So if you guys wanna see the work that we've done so far, which, I don't know, I feel like it's not that much. It's been a lot of work, but I don't know. There's not a whole lot done to it. Anyways, it's gonna be there in the Heatwave booth, so you guys can come by and look at it and see kind of what we have going on. So I have a couple of things to do on this, which is why I bought some wheel spacers and got some Ford Stars and mounted some tires on it. And I have to run the wheel spacers because the tie rod hits the wheels, because it's probably made for 22s or whatever it is. So I'm working through it, and I'm gonna have as much little cool things on it. Like, hopefully I have the dash, we'll have the doors on, an intake manifold and an air filter, just so that you guys can come by and check it out. So it's gonna look like this, but just with more body panels. I'm excited about that. So I'm going to do a couple of things here, and then yeah, enjoy some of the CAD badass work that Chris has been doing, and me talking about it and telling you guys a little about the companies who are working on it for us. So hell yeah, enjoy this, and see you guys at Irwindale. Hell yeah. All right, everybody, I want to show you something really cool. This is the CAD model of the engine that we're using for the C8, and you can see how Chris built the engine mounts. There you have the Drift HQ water pump delete, super sick. We even have the Weddle S5 sequential transaxle mounted to it in the back. Weddle was awesome enough to give us the CAD model for that. Chris built this engine mount around the dry sump pump, which sits right on this side, right in front of it. And it's gonna be all sheet metal, laser cut by cage kits, and then welded together kind of in a fixture. So you can see it picks up to the block with 4 different points, and how it mounts to the cross member is relatively flat, other than those stepped washers that will end up welding right to the plate. So it's gonna make life really easy. And the cool thing about this is, proof of concept was in that we did a 3D printed version. So now this CAD model right here will be sent to cage kits. They'll do all the laser cutting and it'll be ready to go. Okay, and here you can see how the 3D printer is actually going to print and hold. I don't know a lot about 3D printing, but all those green shapes is kind of how it's gonna help support the actual engine mount as it's getting 3D printed. So I don't know if Chris has to tell it how to do that or if the program kind of helps it, but you can see how he's laying it out in the 3D printer and just what it's going to start doing when he clicks the print button. And here we have it, the actual 3D printer. Got the temperature readouts and it's playing what it's doing. And here when Chris opens it up, you can actually see inside those nodes, those columns that are gonna help support the piece as it's getting printed underway. This unit is amazing, right? Like I'm sure it's not the best out there, but man, it has made our life so nice being able to print these parts and actually test the fit, because yeah, as you guys saw in a previous episode, that sucker fits perfect. Wild, man. Look at it go. All right, here it is, the finished product. It's all done. I've never seen this process happen in front of me, so in order to see this and have it be a race car part, pop out just like that, freaking awesome. Wow, dude, that thing's sick. All right, one of the first things that we had to do to get this thing back to being a roller is get some wheel spacers, because it's just not gonna look cool. I don't want this thing sitting with sunken wheels, and because it doesn't have wide arms, the wheels were sunken, so there's a wheel spacer on the front there, a 1-inch wheel spacer, so that'll fit pretty good once the car comes down. I realized that I don't have any 14mm lug nuts because these studs are massive, so those lug nuts will be here. One of the things that I'm going to do in order to get this thing to steer, since we don't have a dash bar, is make a steering column out, probably out of a 2x4, so this will just hold itself up so the boys can steer it. So I guess I'll go do that out of a 2x4. What a dork. Gonna bolt it to the seat, piece straight up, hose clamp, hold it up. Super quick, super dirty, easy. Let's get to it. Definitely need a fresh freaking Momo for this thing, that's for sure. Okay, 19. Okay, whip this up real quick. Cut piece of tubing, welded it onto this piece of box tube. Hopefully got some angle in it. Probably need to grind the bottom of it, but yeah, it does something like this. Whoop. Bada boom. There it is. I got a hose clamp for it. That'll go around there. That's pretty much it. She'll steer. This is the Radiator. Man, I've been working with PWR for a lot of years now, and all I can say is amazing things about them. The quality of work is absolutely insane, you guys. How we have this now for the C6 is that they have the engineering drawing and the CAD files already done for the radiator and the intercooler in the C6. So when I damaged, for instance, the intercooler, which happens all the time, literally ran into Chelsea and damaged my intercooler a slight bit, I can just tell them, hey guys, can you make me another intercooler? It comes completely done. All the flanges welded on with the vibrant flanges, the bungs welded on so that it bolts directly up to our CAD designed cage kit's front end. It literally bolts right in, fans, fan shroud and everything. And this is what I wanted to do with the C8 as well, because I've never really been able to create spares on my own when I'm just having to build and just put hours and hours and hours into making the components and then hours and hours and hours into making the spare. So although there's possibly a lot more time into doing this and designing this and going back and forth with Chris and PWR, in the end, the long run, if we ever decide to build another C8 drift car, which is a little bit laughable, I'll be able to just get one of these radiators. Or if I damage the radiator, which is incredibly possible, they'll be able to just make me another one. So this is why we do this. It also makes the fit absolutely perfect. And then when you work with companies like PWR, you can trust that it's going to be the highest quality. And I'm telling you guys, when you see this thing in person, it's going to blow your mind. And you can see kind of the turnaround. So it has side mount brackets that'll bolt directly to some points in the chassis that are already there, like holes that are already there in the chassis. And the rear one basically bolts to the firewall. It's a little bit tight in there. But you can see that we have two Spall brushless, I think they're the 11-inch fans that end up fitting on there, which is why you see the fan sit into the fan shroud. It's the brushless design. Mazir radiator mounted water pump, something I'm super, super excited about using, not having to do extra fittings, extra lines, extra all of that. Fittings coming right out of the top. And then what's awesome about this is that Chris designed it to fit right into the chassis. And then PWR puts their own spin on it, makes the fan shroud, says, okay, we're going to need, a double bushing on this mount to support it. We're going to have this be this thick. So we kind of just gave them the overall shape that's going to fit in the chassis and the strategy to mounting it to the chassis. And then they went ahead and drew this in full, right? Took it one step further to their own specifications and then sent us this CAD file back for review. So after we reviewed it, we plopped it in our chassis model and we can confirm with PWR, yep, this thing is good to go. You guys are ready to start manufacturing. So we're currently in the process and hoping to take delivery of this Radiator in the next couple of weeks. Next up is the fuel cell. So I've been working with FuelSafe directly for a really long time, and those guys have been helping me kind of do something out of the ordinary. On the Corvettes, we don't run your traditional rectangle style box off the shelf, bump drop in. No, it's basically where the stock fuel tank is, right behind the driver and passenger seat. We run one of them. So I knew when we went to go put a cell on the C8, it was probably going to be no different. There'd be no off the shelf that was just going to magically fit. As much as I wanted it to be, because it's a lot less effort than this, right? This takes an army of people to produce, multiple CAD engineers, the people who are my main point of contact at FuelSafe, me going back and forth with them. But I think that it's all going to be worth it, because right here you can see this is a kind of a strange design tank, and it's very long, and it's long and skinny for a reason, because it's going to end up fitting in the actual tunnel of the transmission. So I'm going to pause it right here on second 17 so that you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about, right? Normally the torque tube runs in the tunnel of like 5, 6, 7 C7 Corvettes, right? But in the C8, there's not really anything in there other than some coolant lines going to the radiators and the condensers and whatnot in the front. Now, I don't know exactly why they have this tunnel being so big. Maybe it's because the E-Ray is going to have batteries in there or what it is, but what I saw is a perfect place to mount the fuel cell. Now, I want to put the weight as far forward as possible, and this cell, being the length that it is, lives in like the front half of the torque tube tunnel, right? Maybe the front 3/4. I try to push the weight as far forward as possible. Here you can see on the very front of that fuel cell that it has the inlet. So we're going to be fueling from the front with the same FuelSafe dry brake that we always use with the red head fuel fillers. They kind of left that filler to me so that I can weld my angle onto it. So that's why you see kind of just an open hole in the front of the fuel cell. In the middle, you can see that's our Aeromotive fuel pump. And then the rear, that's the rear tank where it has all the pickups and everything. So you can see it kind of goes up to there, and that's why it's a flappy valve there. That's where we'll end up filling the fuel, but then we'll have to weld our elbow on there. There you can see the Aeromotive brushless 5 gallon per minute pump that's going to drop right in out of the top, which is what we're going to cut a hole in the actual chassis so that we can remove the fuel pump without having to remove the fuel cell. That was a goal. That was something that we went back and forth a ton on. Here it'll get cut away in the half, and you can see how we're going to achieve this. So there's going to be trap doors that let fuel into this kind of the sump where the Aeromotive fuel pump is going to end up sitting, and hopefully not let it out. And those walls are going to come up just over halfway, and I think that due to the shape of the cell, it's really going to work well with fuel slosh. And there's going to be foam in here as well. That real large fitting that you see in the back is called a discriminator valve. That discriminator valve is a freaking cool thing, and it's going to allow us to not be able to see how much fuel we're putting in the car, because you guys can remember, we're fueling from the front, but the vent and everything is in the back of the cell. And that's due to a discriminator valve. We're going to be able to put our dry brake crayons on there. It's going to dump a ton of fuel per minute, but as soon as the fuel cell gets full, that has a check valve in there that's going to shut off and not allow any more fuel to go into the fuel cell. It's going to be great. We're going to be able to dump the can right on the front, go do something else, and come back later when it's already full, and it's hopefully not going to be pushing anything else out. But this is the only way to do it where you can't see at all how much fuel is actually going in the fuel cell. We're going to run a fuel level sending unit, something that I've never run in my cars before, but they have it. It fits, and I think that is going to be awesome. Kind of getting all that data back to the AIM digital dash, we'll be able to see how much fuel is actually in it, which is going to be perfect, at least for when it's a demo car. Yeah, man, I'm really pumped on this thing. Again, this was something that we went over with FuelSafe many times, back and forth with their CAD engineers. So thank you guys at FuelSafe. Thank you to the team to put up with all my little changes, because I probably changed it 5 different times just as things were developing and working through it. But that's in the manufacturing stage too, so we should have that in a couple of weeks. I'm very excited to show you guys the next steps as these parts start showing up after the final round here. So, oh man, I'm excited. All right, so we're gonna go back to one of these other videos because I wanna talk a little bit more and highlight the transaxle setup that we're using. The reason why we went with this Weddle transaxle setup is, one, it's made in America and it's designed in America, and I'm all about that as much as humanly possible. You know, the guys over at 6XD, they're built and designed in America, and I love it, but they just don't have something like this. This is specifically for mid and rear engine applications. So when I was digging and trying to find what kind of transaxle, kind of before I even got this, the C8 chassis itself, I wasn't sure, is this even gonna be possible? Because I knew I wasn't gonna use anything stock. I knew I wasn't gonna use anything electronic. X-Track might be a little bit out of my budget. So I was just kind of looking for what are our options? And we had some things that were requirements. And you can see here that the CVs, like the center line where the axles connect, are very close to the back of the engine. Now, there's a certain measurement and a range that we required it to be, and this fit within that range because the engine's gonna be where the engine's gonna be. We can only put it so far forward, and we moved it even further forward than the LT was, but it still needed to have a certain distance so that the axle line wouldn't be way too abrupt. So the Weddle checked that box. The next thing was that the CVs, right, where the axles connect, needed to be over the input shaft. So that means that the CVs needed to be on top of where, like above where the crankshaft would be. And that's just, again, due to axle line and the configuration in a mid-engine car. So finally I kind of was like, all right, I'm just gonna call these guys and I'm just gonna see what's up. And as soon as I talked to them, I was like, oh, these guys know what they're talking about. They are into the project. They kind of listened to me and answered my questions, even though I'm a dummy when it comes into this transaxle world. He's like, no, we have this, we have that. And then sent over these CAD files so that Chris and I can start playing with things just to see if it was even possible. Then he teaches me, yeah, see, that's a Volkswagen adapter plate on there that we're gonna have to run this starter and this blind clutch, and so all these things kind of started to fall in place. But we're like, wow, this thing's actually gonna work. And he was the one who pointed out, no, we can flip that sucker upside down, we can do it. They have all these configurations, unlimited amount of gear ratios basically for what we're going to be needing, and it ended up working. So that's why now you can see that we have our mock-up case, which is just an empty Weddle transaxle bolted to the back of the engine, kind of sitting in the C8 because of that. And that was an amazing piece of the project that was almost easy, right? And to me, I thought that was going to be the biggest, hardest hurdle, but for them, they're on top of it, man, and that's what having these amazing partners does. So thank you very much to Weddle for getting this info to us and making this project possible, in my opinion. Look at this freaking exhaust collector. Holy moly. That thing's serious. 2 1/4 primaries. Ugh, wild. 5-inch exit, and then we'll probably end up transitioning to an oval. Yeah. So I'm gonna set this in here just so you guys can geek over it like I am. It's gonna go basically right here. Upon going over the CAD drawing with Chris, I think we're gonna need to cut into here slightly to raise it up just to give the transmission adequate clearance. But for now, I'm just gonna kind of have it be sitting in there just so you guys can look at it. So I'm gonna put it right about here. I'm gonna use these 2 transmission bolts and have a little stand. Boom. I just did the shape of the exhaust there so it can have a little swoop. Same principle as the steering column, just a hose clamp on. So yeah. And obviously we'll circle back to this when I start discussing with Borla the design of the exhaust and all that, because this is gonna be 8-inch-1, right? But it's gonna be sequential fire. So it doesn't mean that 4 go to this side and 4 go to this side. They cross over, and I don't know off the top of my head which cylinder goes to what. So that's something that I'm gonna have to sit down with the engineers at Borla and discuss and come up with a game plan because Chris and I will basically be able to put in the position in the chassis where this collector is going to be optimal to fit tubes and everything in. But we're bringing this thing to Borla, and they're going to do the exhaust, so it's going to be up to them to figure out how to get those tubes, get it out, whether we use like a carbon fiber tip or a custom, we got to figure that out. So we'll circle back on this. Borla and I have a lot to talk about for this exact project, but for now I'll just put the coupler or the collector there so you guys can enjoy it. Okay, just finished the super quick and dirty collector mount. Just a tab that bolts to the transmission and holds the collector in there, just so we can just enjoy it. Okay, that's kind of all I have time for on this thing. It's Friday of the week before Formula Drift Irwindale, so got some more stuff to do on that, and then got some stuff to show you guys for this. So I'm gonna have to finish this Monday, Tuesday before we head down. The car will be on display Friday and Saturday, so make sure you guys come out to the final event. This is it, we're going for the championship. I'll be in that thing and you guys will be able to enjoy this. So now check out this awesome CAD stuff of the components that are being built, and we should have in just a few short weeks. So enjoy, guys.